What if I told you that nobody leaves a belief system quietly? Not because they don't want to, but because belief systems rarely let you go without a fight. Not a physical fight, but a psychological one. A war of words, a battle of assumptions. And the weapons? They don't just come in the form of scriptures, they come in the form of statements. Short ones, sharp ones, worn smooth by repetition and passed off as wisdom. You were just hurt. You're mad at God. You just want to sin. I'm pretty sure you've heard them all. Maybe you've even said a few of them, but none of them mean what they claim to mean. They're not really about you at all. They're defense mechanisms, reflexes, flashcards people reach for when your existence challenges their certainty. Because if you used to believe and don't anymore, then what does that say about what they still believe? These aren't harmless comments, they're coded messages, each one revealing something about how religion protects itself, not just theologically, but psychologically. And when you really dig into them, you'll see something else too. Most of them fall apart under pressure. They're riddled with logical fallacies, they confuse control with care, and they cause real harm to real people, often while claiming to speak in love. In this video, we're going to unpack the top things Christians say to outspoken atheists, not to villainize anyone, but to demystify the script, to hold up each phrase and ask, what does this really mean? What fear is it covering up? And what harm does it cause? Because if we're ever going to have honest conversations about belief, doubt, and everything in between, we've got to stop pretending these phrases are harmless. They're not. And today, we're going to talk about why. You were just hurt. Now imagine if I said to you, if you're single, you were just cheated on. This is an ad hominem and genetic fallacy. It attacks an assumed origin of the disbelief, you're hurt, instead of engaging with the disbelief itself. It dismisses your reasoning by attacking an alleged emotional history. Now, what it reveals is that this isn't just dismissal, it's deflection. It quietly admits that church hurt is a thing, but shifts the blame to you for how you may have responded. It implies that the only valid reaction to being harmed by a system is to return to it. That's not healing, that's gaslighting dressed as spiritual concern. It reveals a defense mechanism rooted in fear. If your pain is real and valid, then they might have to look closer at the very system that they're still a part of. So instead, they label your exit a weakness. Now let's talk about the harm that this does. This response pressures people to stay in or go back to environments that hurt them. It trains people to doubt their own boundaries and accept harm as holy. Over time, it teaches entire communities to tolerate abuse, call it love, and call the ones who leave bitter. You're just mad at God. Well, what if I said to you, you're just mad at science? Or if I stopped believing in Poseidon, am I now mad at the ocean? This is a straw man fallacy and a false cause, right? It misrepresents atheism as emotional rebellion and assumes a cause that doesn't logically lead to the conclusion. What it reveals is this statement mistakes rejection for resentment. It assumes belief is the default and disbelief is a kind of emotional betrayal. Like God was your ex and now you're just out here bitter and wounded. It reveals an inability to comprehend disbelief without personalizing it. In their mind, God is so real, so central, that if you walk away, it must be because you're emotionally wounded, not intellectually honest. Now, the harm here is this kind of response pathologizes doubt. It shames people for thinking critically and rewrites their journey as a tantrum. That makes it nearly impossible for believers to listen and for ex-believers to be heard. The result? A culture where disagreement is labeled as dysfunction and curiosity is dismissed as immaturity. You just want to sin. You just want to feel superior is something that I could say back. Again, this is an ad hominem fallacy, and it's also a moralistic fallacy. It suggests your beliefs are invalid because of supposed immoral motives. It accuses you of choosing atheism to justify wrongdoing rather than based on reason. What it reveals is that this actually isn't about your actions, it's about control. It assumes the only reason someone would reject religious belief is to indulge in behavior they know is wrong. It reframes freedom as rebellion and desire as danger. It reveals a framework where morality is dictated, not discerned, where obedience is virtue and questioning is vice. In that world, wanting something anything becomes suspect unless it's pre-approved by scripture or the representative of that scripture in your life. Now, there's obvious harm here. This mindset turns personal agency into a moral liability. It shames people for trusting their own judgment, their own bodies, and even their own desires. It also reinforces purity culture, heteronormativity, and harmful ideas about sex and identity. Teaching people that their natural impulses are sinful and their autonomy is evil. You were never truly called. Santa never put you on his nice list. Could say something similar. In this case, this would be a no true Scotsman. It reframes the definition of a true believer to exclude anyone who leaves, making the belief unfalsifiable. Now, what it reveals is that this statement doesn't challenge your reasoning, it erases your entire experience. It implies that your prayers, your service, your tears, your surrender, all of it was fake. It reveals a desperate need to protect the belief system at all costs, even if it means rewriting your past to make their present feel secure. Because if you were truly called and still walked away, it means that the calling itself might not be permanent, or worse, not real. Now, the harm is this is spiritual gaslighting. It invalidates years, sometimes decades of someone's life. That type of erasure causes emotional and existential damage, especially for people trying to heal or reconstruct their identity outside of faith and religion. It also creates a culture where loyalty is valued more than honesty, and those who leave are written out like a scandal. You were never one of us. Maybe you were never a human. Again, this is that no true Scotsman's fallacy and the ad hominem. Similar to the previous one, it retroactively redefines who qualifies as a real believer. It also attacks character rather than addressing reasoning. What it reveals is that this isn't about theology, this is about tribalism. It's the community's way of pulling rank, of declaring that because you left, you never really belonged. Do you see that social attack there? It reveals how religious groups often define identity by loyalty, again, not honesty. And the moment you question or evolve, you're retroactively cast as an outsider, not because you changed, but because the group needs to feel unchanged. Now, the harm here is this erasure fractures people's entire sense of belonging. It turns departure into betrayal and healing into heresy. It makes communities emotionally unsafe where people fear asking honest questions because they know the penalty isn't correction, it's exile. Over time, it trains people to fake agreement for survival. And so, what you learn from this is that when these people, when these Christians are saying these things to you, they're not even saying them for you, they're saying them for other Christians to see, to remind them to stay in check, or I will treat you this way. Real quick, if this conversation is hitting for you, I want to make sure you check out the digital content guide I created to go with this video. It's called Things Christians Say, and it breaks down everything we're talking about here into bite-sized, shareable, and super helpful pages you can revisit, reflect on, or even send to someone who's still saying some of this stuff to you. You can grab it right now on Windows Shop. That's windowsshop.dldd.us. That's our digital marketplace where we partner with people-centric creators to build sustainable community networks, tools, and resources. Now, while you're there, check out the merch, digital journals, and other guides, and even grab some coffee and a mug to go with these conversations. Again, that's windowsshop.dldd.us, where we're making belief-free living not just possible, but powerful. Now let's get back to our conversation. You followed man, not God. You used the map, not the GPS. This is a false dichotomy and also a red herring. It creates a false binary. You either follow God or you follow people. Apparently, never both. And this diverts from systemic issues by blaming individual error. Now, what it reveals is that this statement functions like a cleanup crew for shattered authority. It shifts all blame for your departure onto flawed leaders while protecting the system itself. It reveals a commitment to preserving the divine brand, even if it means sacrificing the very humans the faith claims to care about, and the very humans that speak for the faith. God remains perfect, the church remains holy, only you are the naive participant. Now, the harm here is this narrative keeps abusive or manipulative leadership cycles in place. It teaches people to ignore institutional red flags and blame themselves for being misled. Worse, it disconnects accountability from theology, making it nearly impossible to confront harm without being accused of disobedience or bitterness. That's how injustice hides behind divinity. You're proving the Bible is right about the last days. You're proving the education system has failed. See, this is circular reasoning and confirmation bias. It uses the belief system's own claims to validate itself. Any counter evidence becomes evidence, a self sealing argument, if you will. Now, what this reveals is that this isn't an observation, it's a doctrinal escape hatch. Any deviation, any dissent, any doubt isn't engaged, it's absorbed. So your leaving isn't a challenge to belief, it becomes fuel for it. It reveals a closed loop belief system where evidence doesn't matter because every outcome, even rejection, gets reinterpreted as divine validation. It protects belief not through reason, but through reframing. Now, the harm, this response turns every honest question or departure into an existential threat, not just to doctrine, but to destiny itself. It robs people of their agency, reducing their life journey to a warning sign or a villain arc. It fuels end times hysteria, deepens us versus them thinking, and makes empathy impossible, as we're currently seeing today. Because once you're fulfilling prophecy, you're no longer a person, you're a plot device. Why don't you attack Islam or other religions? Why don't you rate the store you've never shopped at? This is a tu quo qui fallacy, or whataboutism as well, deflects criticism by pointing to others. Why don't you go after them rather than addressing the issue at hand? Now, what it reveals is that this isn't about concern for fairness, it's about deflection. It tries to flip the focus from the critique at hand and turn the critic into the problem. It reveals a subtle demand for religious exceptionalism, a belief that Christianity deserves special immunity from scrutiny. And when it's challenged, that feels like persecution, not conversation. Now, the harm, which I shouldn't even have to speak to, but this mindset shuts down meaningful dialogue and stokes a victim complex. It trains people to see critical thinking as an attack and self reflection as betrayal. It also weaponizes comparative suffering, as if Christianity can only be held accountable after every other religion is critiqued first. That fuels tribalism, not truth. Deep down, you still believe. Deep down, you don't believe? See, this fallacy is begging the question, and it's also appeal to ignorance. It assumes belief is innate and inescapable, begs the question, and argues from the lack of disproof. You can't prove you don't still believe in the same way that you can't really prove that you believe by that argument. What it reveals is that this statement isn't about you, it's about their unresolved fear. If you can truly stop believing and live a full, meaningful life, then their entire system starts to look optional. It reveals a need to externalize doubt, to place it on you instead of confronting it within. Because if belief isn't inescapable, then neither is their identity. And that's terrifying. And so the harm here is that this response invalidates your autonomy and gaslights your transformation. It teaches people to question the sincerity of others rather than listening to their lived experience. Over time, it creates a culture where doubt must be hidden and honesty is labeled as deception, which isolates deconstructing believers and keeps everyone stuck in performative faith. You're leading people astray. Well, maybe you're keeping people stuck. All right, so this fallacy is the slippery slope, and it's also, again, the ad hominem. It suggests that your views will inevitably lead others to ruin, that's the slippery slope, while also attacking your intentions or character and ignoring the validity of your claims. Now, what it reveals is that this statement weaponizes fear. It paints you not as a person who's changed their mind, but as a threat to others' salvation. It reveals how belief systems often preserve power through control of influence. Your voice isn't wrong, it's dangerous because it dares to exist without their approval. Now, the harm here is that this mindset turns curiosity into corruption and disagreement into danger. It justifies shaming, silencing, or even severing ties, especially with those who are outspoken. It also fosters spiritual paranoia, where control over what people hear becomes more important than whether it's true. In that climate, honesty isn't brave, it's a liability. Well, you've stuck around this long, which lets me know that you are really vibing with this content. And because of that, I think you deserve a bonus. So here's a bonus one. You're being used by the devil. I could say you're being used by your pastor. Again, this would be that ad hominem. It'd also be an appeal to fear and poisoning the well. It attacks your credibility by labeling you as a tool of evil, which incites fear and makes any engagement with your ideas seem spiritually dangerous. Now, what it reveals is that this isn't a debate, it's a dismissal of your humanity. When someone invokes the devil, they've exited the conversation and entered combat. It reveals a worldview where dissent isn't just wrong, it's demonic. That makes critical thinking a threat and empathy a weakness. And if you're possessed, there's no need to understand you, only to defeat you. Now, the harm, and again, this shouldn't be one that I should even have to call out, but this kind of rhetoric strips people of agency and weaponizes superstition. It leads to emotional and spiritual abuse, fractured families, and in some cases, many cases, even right now, real life harm justified by spiritual warfare. It also shuts down any chance of dialogue or reconciliation because once you're with the devil, you're no longer someone to talk to, you're someone to cast out. These phrases might sound like harmless throwaway lines, spiritual cliches meant to explain or comfort, but beneath the surface, they're tools of control, deflection, and denial. They minimize trauma, erase personal growth, and silence critical thought. They reveal belief systems more interested in protecting themselves than understanding the people who leave them. When someone walks away from faith, it's not always because they're hurt, mad, or sinful. Sometimes they've simply grown. That growth deserves curiosity, not condemnation. These statements don't preserve truth, they preserve power. And if we want healthier conversations and healthier communities, we have to stop weaponizing religion against the people who've outgrown it. These statements aren't just emotionally manipulative, they're logically flawed. That's why they collapse under scrutiny and why they're often used to shut down, not open up conversations. If this hit home, don't stop here. Keep going with disagreement therapy, dive into our Bible study with the next pastor, or join the daily Atheist Morning Show. Each one pulls back a different layer of what life is like beyond superstition. Watch what speaks to you next and stay in the conversation. Until next time, keep rising.